Hello, let's talk about the Nepal Himalayan flood of 2026. Before we could jump into the scientific terms, let's understand what exactly happened. On August 26, 2026, a devastating flood struck the Himalayan region along the Nepal Tibet border. What made this disaster particularly frightening was how suddenly it happened. There was no obvious period of torrential rain in the affected area that would normally give people a warning that a major river flood was coming. Instead, the disaster appears to have begun high in the mountains, where a huge section of glacier and surrounding rock collapsed. The resulting mass of ice, rock, and debris entered the river system and produced an enormous surge of water and sediment that traveled rapidly downstream. But to really understand what happened, we need to understand a few scientific ideas first. What exactly is a glacier? A glacier is essentially a gigantic, slowly moving mass of ice that forms when snow accumulates over many years and gets compressed under its own weight. Think about snow falling every winter. One year of snow sits on top of another, then another, and another. Eventually, the weight becomes enormous. The snow gets compressed into dense ice. That giant mass of ice begins to flow very slowly under gravity. That's a glacier. Despite looking like a frozen mountain, a glacier isn't completely stationary. It behaves somewhat like an extremely slow moving river made of ice. So, how can a glacier collapse? That is where things become interesting. A glacier can sit on extremely steep and unstable mountain terrain. Around it can also be huge quantities of rock, snow, and loose sediment. If part of the glacier becomes unstable, a large section can suddenly break away. Scientists often describe events like this as a glacier collapse or ice rock avalanche. If this event, the collapse appears to have involved ice and rock, producing an enormous debris flow toward the valley below. And once an enormous mass starts moving downhill, it can accelerate dramatically. But how does that create a flood? This is probably the most important part. You might think, okay, a glacier fell, but why did an entire river flood? Because the glacier collapse didn't just affect the glacier. The falling ice and rock entered the river valley. Imagine a narrow mountain river. Now imagine millions of tons of ice, rock, and debris suddenly falling into that valley. The river can effectively become blocked or severely restricted. This creates what scientists call a landslide dam or debris dam. What is a landslide dam? A landslide dam is a natural blockage created when rocks, soil, ice, and other debris fall into a river and stop or greatly reduce its flow. It's basically nature accidentally building a dam. But unlike a properly engineered dam, this one is irregular, unstable, full of gaps made from loose material, not designed to withstand enormous water pressure, and that's what makes it dangerous. What happens behind the blockage? The river doesn't stop producing water. Water is continuously coming from upstream. So imagine putting a giant pile of rocks across a bathtub while the tap is still running. Water starts accumulating. The same thing can happen in a mountain valley. The stored water can suddenly escape. Instead of a normal river flowing downstream, you can suddenly have an enormous surge carrying water, mud, rocks, ice, trees, broken infrastructure down the valley. That's a flash flood. Normal are caused by several days of rainfall. With ordinary flooding, people may have time to notice the river is rising, but with a mountain flash flood, the situation can change incredibly quickly. One moment it can be a normal river, a short time later, a massive torrent is coming downstream. That is one reason these events can be so deadly. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and share. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the current situation. What precautions could have been taken? What could have been done better? And what can we learn from this for the future?